Hi, I'm Ryan Aber from the Oklahoman here with Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch. We're in New York City, where on Saturday night, the Heisman Trophy will be awarded. The last two winners have been Oklahoma quarterbacks. There's another Oklahoma quarterback in the mix this year, but also some new faces, and it's probably likely to be a new face. But Joey, let's talk a little bit about each of one of these guys, starting with Ohio State's tandem, Justin Fields and Chase Young.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty rare territory for a school to have a player from its offense and a player from its defense. It's the first time anybody has had a Heisman finalist on both sides of the ball since they started dividing guys in 1982. So it really underscores how well balanced, how much of a juggernaut Ohio State has been throughout much of its season. It's really quite a luxury to have you're a player from your defense and a player from your offense here.
Yeah, and Oklahoma knows what it's like to have a couple of players here. They had that just a few years ago with Baker Mayfield and D.D. Westbrook, but both those players were offensive players. Jalen Hurts isn't likely to be the third consecutive winner at Oklahoma behind Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, but his season's been fantastic since transferring from Alabama. The leadership that he's shown, his ability to run the football, at times has turned the ball over, I think, a little bit more than a lot of people from OU would like. But overall, just a fantastic season from him. I think it's gone about as well as they could have hoped, especially given the fact that Oklahoma is in the college football playoff yet again. And Jalen Hurts had a big role in that, especially after that loss against Kansas State, to help them turn it around with a tarmac meeting, get the team together. And I think he is sort of singularly the identity of this team. Joey, I also want to ask you about the fourth Heisman finalist, a guy that you're familiar with in a different way. Joe Burrow from LSU is doing fantastic things there, but was at Ohio State just a couple years ago.
Yeah, if you really want a sliding doors scenario, you can go back to August 2017. It's fall camp. JT Barrett was Ohio State's starting quarterback. He was going to be a senior. But Joe Burrow was entrenched in a backup quarterback competition with Dwayne Haskins, and he ends up breaking his hand in that fall camp competition, ends up becoming third string in the depth chart behind Dwayne Haskins. And then late in the season when Barrett gets hurt, it's Dwayne Haskins, not Joe Burrow, the backup, who comes in to replace Barrett. That gave Haskins then an edge in their quarterback competition. In the spring of 2018, Joe Burrow leaves as a grad transfer, ends up at LSU, and has this historic season in the second year at LSU. So you can kind of go back to August 2017 and wonder if Joe Burrow doesn't break his hand. Is he Ohio State's backup in 2017? Is he the guy who comes in and replaces JT Barrett against Michigan? Is he the guy then who has the upper hand to starting in 2018? Instead, Dwayne Haskins has the fast track, and it leads to Joe Burrow transferring as a grad transfer for his final two seasons of eligibility. I don't think Ohio State has too many qualms about it. They've had Dwayne Haskins, who had a great season, and they ended up with Justin Fields, who had a stellar season as well. So they've had that luxury of the transfer portal to bring in talented guys there, and even though they lost Joe Burrow.
Yeah, it's worked out really well for them. Really, all three of these quarterbacks, it's been fantastic for the transfer talk with all three of those guys coming from other programs. Do you see that slowing down anytime soon? It seems like it's done nothing but pick up momentum when you see teams with Heisman finalists that are transfers, with Heisman winners the last couple of years, and then also being able to make the playoff with these guys.
I think it's going to be here to stay because you've seen such a remarkable success rate with it. So many of these guys who do go into the transfer portal or leave as grad transfers, you're almost able to plug and play right away. So I think it's going to only encourage more guys to go this route. So I think schools will be more receptive to picking up guys off the transfer wire, if you will. And in a lot of ways, it's good for college football. Justin Fields made the point earlier this season. Well, what's the point of having two or three good quarterbacks on the same team? It's better if they spread their wings and go across the country. And I think that's kind of what we've seen this season with talent spreading across conferences and elite quarterbacks not just being stacked on one depth chart, but on multiple teams.
Yeah, no doubt. Like I said, it's worked out great for three of the four playoff teams. Only Trevor Lawrence from Clemson started off at the school where he's going to lead his team into the playoff. Joey, also wanted to ask you about Chase Young specifically. What is it that's made this guy so dominant this year? Clearly the best defensive player in college football, and I think a lot of people think that he's the best player, period, in college football.
One thing that's been a huge help to him is he actually played his sophomore season last fall on two sprained ankles, and that really limited him to some degree the way he wanted to cut and bend at the line of scrimmage. And being 100%, being developed by Larry Johnson, the guru on their defensive line coach, he's had a great season. And the reason it's a little bit remarkable he ended up in New York because it's so hard for defensive lineman to end up here. He's only the fourth guy since '82 who's been a defensive lineman, and he did it despite missing 2 games with a suspension. So he lost a chance to add to his sack total, and he still ended up setting the school record. I think in a lot of ways, his play in the high-profile games really pushed him over the top to get here. If you look at the Wisconsin game, he had 4 sacks. That was Fox's big noon kickoff game, and the Penn State game in November, he had 3 sacks as well when he was coming off the suspension. So every time national attention focused on Ohio State, Chase Young came up big, and you have to put up those sack totals if you're going to be a defensive end to get to New York because there really isn't another flashy metric that you're going to use to evaluate a defensive lineman. It's not like quarterbacks nowadays where they put up all these video game stats, and it's really easy if you're just glancing at a box score to notice a guy. It's a lot harder for a defensive end, but in those small windows and those high-profile, high-leverage situations, Chase Young took advantage.
Because of that, was there any surprise around Columbus that he was one of the finalists?
I think some surprise. I think probably people would have told you it was a coin flip. You just never know with the Heisman how many guys they're going to invite because, as you know, the last couple of years they invited just three finalists. You didn't know if it was just going to be 3 quarterbacks this year or would there be as many as 4 or 5 guys. The fact that there were 4, probably less people were going to be less surprised in that case.
Yeah, and also, obviously, I think a lot of people think this is Joe Burrow's award at this point. I think it would be a surprise if any of the other 3 wind up taking home the trophy. Do you get a sense that the 2 Ohio State guys, and really even Dobbins, who was certainly warranted consideration there, that they maybe split the votes and make it easier for a guy like Burrow to win?
I think it's certainly possible because not only do you have the 3 really talented Ohio State players from that Midwest region, you also have Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, who could have finished in the top 10 of the voting. I'm sure he got a large contingent of the votes. And if you want another Ohio State subplot, because I guess there is no shortage of them, the real interesting part will be, can Joe Burrow win in a landslide that is bigger than the landslide that Troy Smith won in 2006? Smith has the record for the highest percentage of total votes in the voting. He had 91%. I think it was 91.63. And Joe Burrow could top that if he wins as handily as people expect him to.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see who finishes second in this group. If it's Jalen Hurts, who I think that would be a lot of, obviously the SEC region is really paying attention to what he's done in the Midwest and others. It's always interesting to see the regional breakdown of the votes. Excuse me. But all 4 of these guys have just been fantastic this year. There's a reason why all 4 in the playoff. Joey, before we wrap it up, I'm curious, has this award, do you think this award has become a little bit too playoff focused? It seems like you almost have to be among one of those top teams to really have a legitimate chance.
Not entirely. I was actually looking it up before we went on this, and 13 of the 22 finalists in the playoff era have been playoff guys. So that means a third of the guys who get here aren't on playoff teams, which was a little bit higher than I actually thought. And Lamar Jackson did win it in 2016, and he wasn't on a playoff team. I think it's become, in general, with the BCS era and the playoff era, I think it's a continuation of that where it's a player from a top team, and the sport is so quarterback-driven now. It even leans more toward quarterbacks as well. So I think that's generally how it's been since the late 90s, and I don't see any reason it's going to slow down in the playoff era. But guys who put up those video game stats, I think, are going to always get consideration.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's 16 of the last 19 winners have been quarterbacks. The other 3 all running backs. So it's been a long time since a non-quarterback or running back has won the award. Joey, tell people where they can read your work, where they can follow you on social media.
So if you want to read all of our Ohio State coverage, you can go to BuckeyeExtra.com. There's just one E in there. And then if you want to follow me on Twitter.com, my handle is Joey R as in rabbit, and then Kaufman, Kaufman.
All right. And I'm Ryan Aber from the Oklahoman. You can read all of my work at Oklahoman.com and follow me on Twitter at RYABER. Thank you for joining our Heisman Talk.